It's 2025, and I want to talk about my 3 favorite reasons of 2025 why I love South Dakota Trust. So let's get into it. All right, my 3 favorite things about South Dakota trust laws in 2025. Sometimes it varies from year to year. It just depends on what's pertinent related to client planning and what we're really up against and what we're focused on. But in 2025, the 3 things I love are, and this is in no particular order, it's not priority to lowest priority, but number 1 is asset protection. So what's unique about South Dakota compared to most states is that it allows you to you self-settle an irrevocable trust for your own benefit. You move your own assets into it. And because it's an irrevocable trust, it's going to offer you asset protection from any type of personal creditors. Now, most states don't allow for that type of planning. Not that it's illegal, it just doesn't exist because there isn't the law there that allows for it. So states like Texas, which are known for having good creditor-debtor laws, really debtor laws, I guess, then they don't have this self-settled asset protection trust. There's other states that do, but they're not very flexible. They're pretty rigid. They don't really protect you in the way that South Dakota does. So South Dakota and Nevada are recognized as being the 2 best trust jurisdictions, with them having a lot of similarities, but there are certain things that push South Dakota over top of Nevada that a lot of people don't talk about, but that's not the point of today's video. All right, so this asset protection aspect. So you can self-settle, you can set it up for the benefit of yourself. Because South Dakota has such flexible laws, you can also do other types of asset protection planning. So maybe it doesn't make sense to set up a trust for your own benefit. You can do what's called a hybrid DAPT. So the asset protection trust itself is called a DAPT, a Domestic Asset Protection Trust, a DAPT. Because South Dakota is so flexible, you can also have the option of setting up a hybrid DAPT, which I won't go into great detail about, but just know that there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to asset protection trust in South Dakota that make it the premier jurisdiction. So that's why my first reason why I love South Dakota so much in 2025. The next reason is that there's no state income tax. And this isn't necessarily a big thing for people who say live in Texas or Florida or some other state that doesn't have an income tax. But there are some states, some that come to top of mind are New Jersey, Hawaii, California, New York, that have really high state income tax rates, state and local income tax rates. I know Hawaii has 11%, that's a top rate. California, it's almost 14%. So what clients in these states can do to take advantage of South Dakota, no state income tax, is that they can move their brokerage accounts, their investment accounts, their closely held business interests, whatever it may be, to a South Dakota irrevocable trust. And if structured properly, it's going to avoid state income tax. And for the right person, that's a huge, huge savings. You do pay state income tax once you take a distribution, but the idea is that you use it kind of like a piggy bank, right? You let the income sit there. It's protected from personal creditors. It's avoiding state income tax, and then you only take a distribution whenever you need to spend money. Maybe you need to go on a vacation. Maybe you need to put a new roof on the house or buy a new car or whatever it is, but you only take the money when you need it. It's a great way to avoid state income tax. And then number 3, and I kind of alluded to number 3 when I was talking about asset protection, but number 3, and it has 2 prongs to it. Number 3 is flexibility. South Dakota has tremendously flexible laws. Okay, so the 2 prongs to that. Number 1 is a directed trust structure. So there's basically 2 types of trust in estate planning. There is a revocable trust and there's an irrevocable trust. Revocable trust is very flexible. You can do whatever you want with it, essentially. An irrevocable trust is historically known as being very rigid, and once you set it up, you're locked into it. You don't have much ability to do anything after that. The fear that I often hear from most people is that they lose complete control once they put the assets into the irrevocable trust. This isn't the case in South Dakota because of what South Dakota law allows for, and that's what's called a directed trust structure. So you take your irrevocable trust has a directed trust structure, meaning that you can part and parcel out the various responsibilities of the administration and management of the trust and the trust assets. So you need a trustee in South Dakota. Usually that's an administrative trustee or trust company that serves in that, what I sometimes say, that back office function of pulling together tax forms and opening up bank accounts and pulling together trust statements, etc. It's a limited scope of what they provide. The client, and this is what the client's most interested in, is continuing to manage the assets. So under South Dakota law, there's a role that we include in an irrevocable trust called the investment trust advisor. We name the client in that role typically, or we can structure it different ways, but that's essentially what we do. We name the client there. And because of that, the client continues to manage the assets the same exact way they did when the assets were in their individual name. So that's the first prong of number 3, which is flexibility. The second prong to this is decanting. So decanting means it's this process of moving assets from one irrevocable trust to another irrevocable trust. The reason that you might want to do that is because that first irrevocable trust no longer works. Maybe it's really old. It was written 80 years ago, 100 years ago. Maybe there's been changes in family circumstances. People have died. People have gotten married. People have had kids. Maybe there's a change in laws, right? So there could be a few different things that push that. But the point is you can move assets from first trust to the second trust. A lot of states do have decanting statutes, but they're very limited in scope and when you can and cannot assign or decant those assets to the new trust. And also there's certain formalities such as maybe getting court approval or maybe giving notice to the beneficiaries of the first trust that this is happening. In South Dakota, you can circumvent a lot of that and there's a lot of flexibility of when you can decant a trust. More flexibility than any other state. So top 3 reasons I love South Dakota in 2025: asset protection, no state income tax, and then ultimately flexibility.